Oh, hey you guys, sorry about that. Hi, happy Saturday. Happy solstice. Uh, I am obviously wearing my yellows to welcome the sun. It is the official first day of summer. Sorry, getting eaten up out here again. I don't know why I've got my stuff on. Anyway, it is the first day of summer. It is the summer solstice, Litha, for those of us who will be celebrating later tonight. I am actually already started. I have been infusing some grapefruit and pineapple, and it is delicious and bright and wonderful for this first day of summer. Mm, sorry, that was grapefruit. Um, I'm happy to be with you guys. So I am sorry this was so late. Hey, Cheryl. I'm sorry it was so late getting the event planned. When we were together on Wednesday, I had told you there might be some things in the works. Um, it did not work out the way I would have planned it, but I can let you guys know now I have changed jobs. Um, so, yeah, I am no longer at the dealership. Um, we parted on good terms, except, of course, when somebody leaves and they have not turned in a resignation, so to give their story for 2 weeks, rumors obviously start. The walk of shame is not something anybody wants to do. And if at 9:40 in the morning you were walking out with a box of your stuff, everybody kind of knows what's happened. So, but as I say, we parted on good terms. And later that very same day, I had a second interview at a company and start with them on Tuesday. I can also officially say that Ashley has gotten a job. She is going to be working at Teddy Bear Daycare. Um, Very excited about that. They're going to help her get her CDA, which was postponed because of the COVID, and she couldn't finish up with the MAC because they couldn't have little ones. So, good things coming. Good things coming. And I am happy to share those with you guys. I have also, sorry, I keep holding this drink like I'm actually going to take a drink of it, so I might as well. Mm, yes. So, sorry, there's a lot of fruit in that. Um, I've also been in touch with Think Dog Productions again. We did put Danny on the back burner, but looks like there's going to be a couple small one-act performances coming up where I will be the singular person on stage. So we don't really have to worry about the social distancing for rehearsals, which is awesome. Um, so yeah, that is kind of it, I suppose. But that is a lot for 1 week. I guess it's really only been, what, 4 days since we were together last. So, yeah, that's a lot to have happened since the last time we were together. Sorry, my poison ring keeps popping open. Mm. So, yeah, there we go. Um, finding some balance is really uh, kind of what my circle is going to be. There's a mosquito. Um, what my circle will be for tonight is acknowledging the things that have happened for the first half of the year and trying to set some wheels in motion for the second half of the year. So that will be awesome. It is like 87 degrees today, but we are outside because I did not want to turn on the air conditioning yet. So I have my cold drink. I hope you guys have something cold to drink. I actually also have an ice pack sitting behind me trying to keep me, oh, that was squared away, trying to keep me a little cooler. Um, So yeah, so two today, and then possibly a poem, depending on where we are at on time. Um, Charles has requested one, but I'm going to do another one first because um, I think these two kind of can go together. The first one we are going to read is Mystification, and then the second one is The Man That Was Used Up. So for those of you that follow Charles's Facebook, um, you will see probably why he wanted me to do this story. But as you guys know, these weekends are about your requests. So if a story is requested, we will read it. So yeah, with that, I am going to take another little drink of my drink. And we'll get started. The Baron Ritzner von Jung was of a noble Hungarian family, every member of which, at least as far back into antiquity as any certain records extend, was more or less remarkable for talent of some description. The majority for that species of grotesquerie in conception of which Tieck, a scion of the house, had given a vivid, although by no means the most vivid, exemplification. My acquaintance with Ritzner commenced at the magnificent Chateau Jung, into which a train of droll adventures, not to be made public, threw me during the summer months of the year 18... Here it was that I obtained a place in his regard, and here, with somewhat more difficulty, a partial insight into his mental conformation. In later days, this insight grew more clear, as the intimacy which had at first permitted it became more close. And when, after 3 years' separation, we met at... I knew all that it was necessary to know of the character of the Baron Ritzner von Jung. I remember the buzz of curiosity which his advent excited within the college precincts on the night of the 25th of June. I remember still more distinctly that while he was pronounced by all parties at first sight the most remarkable man in the world, no person made any attempt at accounting for his opinion. That he was unique appeared so undeniable that it was deemed impertinent to inquire wherein the uniquity consisted. But letting this matter pass for the present, I will merely observe that, from the very first moment of his setting foot within the limits of the university, he began to exercise over the habits, manners, purses, and propensities of the whole community which surrounded him, an influence the most extensive and despotic, yet at the same time the most indefinite and altogether unaccountable. Thus the brief period of his residence at the university forms an era in its annals, and is characterized by all classes of people appertaining to it, or its dependencies, as that very extraordinary epoch forming the domination of the Baron Ritzner von Jung. Upon his advent he sought me out in my apartments. He was then of no particular age, by which I mean that it was impossible to form a guess respecting his age by any data personally afforded. He might have been 15 or 50, and was 21 years and 7 months. He was by no means a handsome man, perhaps the reverse. The contour of his face was somewhat angular and harsh. His forehead was lofty and very fair. His nose a snub, his eyes large, heavy, glassy, and meaningless. About the mouth there was more to be observed. The lips were gently protruded and rested the one upon the other, after such fashion that it is impossible to conceive any, even the most complex, combination of features, conveying so entirely and so singly the idea of unmitigated gravity, solemnity, and repose. It will be perceived, no doubt, from what I have already said, that the Baron was one of those human anomalies now and then to be found, who make the science of mystification the study and the business of their lives. For this science, a peculiar turn of mind gave him instinctively the cue, while his physical appearance afforded him unusual facilities for carrying his projects into effect. I firmly believe that no student during the renowned epoch so quaintly termed the domination of the Baron Ritzner von Jung, ever rightly entered into the mystery which overshadowed his character. I truly think that no person at the university, with the exception of myself, ever suspected him to be capable of a joke, verbal or practical. The old bulldog at the garden gate would sooner have been accused. The ghost of Heraclitus, yes, Heraclitus, or the wig of the emeritus professor of theology. This, too, when it was evident that the most egregious and unpardonable of all conceivable tricks, whimsicalities, and buffooneries were brought about, if not directly by him, at least plainly through his intermediate agency or connivance. The beauty, if I may so call it, of his art mystique lay in that consummate ability, resulting from an almost intuitive knowledge of human nature, and a most wonderful self-possession, by means of which he never failed to make it appear that the drolleries he was occupied in bringing to a point arose partly in spite and partly in consequence of the laudable efforts he was making for their prevention, and for the preservation of the good order and dignity of Alma Mater. The deep, the poignant, the overwhelming mortification, which upon each such failure of his praiseworthy endeavors would suffuse every lineament of his countenance, left not the slightest room for doubt of his sincerity in the bosoms of even his most skeptical companions. The adroitness, too, was no less worthy of observation, by which he contrived to shift the sense of the grotesque from the creator to the created, from his own person to the absurdities to which he had given rise. In no instance before that of which I speak have I known the habitual mystific escape the natural consequence of his maneuvers, an attachment of the ludicrous to his own character and person. Continually developed in an atmosphere of whim, my friend appeared to live only for the severities of society, and not even his own household have for a moment associated other ideas than those of the rigid and august with the memory of the Baron Ritzner von Jung. I don't know. Does that sound like anybody? Sorry, guys. It's just one of those days. During the epoch of his residence it really appeared that the demon of the Dolce Far Niente lay like an incubus upon the university. Nothing, at least, was done beyond eating and drinking and making merry. The apartments of the students were converted into so many pothouses, and there was no pothouse of them all more famous or more frequented than that of the Baron. Our carousals here were many, and boisterous, and long, and never unfruitful of events. Upon one occasion, we had protracted our sitting until nearly daybreak, and an unusual quantity of wine had been drunk. The company consisted of 7 or 8 individuals besides the Baron and myself. Most of these were young men of wealth, of high connection, of great family pride, and all alive with an exaggerated sense of honor. They abounded in the most ultra-German opinions respecting the duello. To these quixotic notions, some recent Parisian publications, backed by 3 or 4 desperate and fatal recounters, had given new vigor and impulse, and thus the conversation, during the greater part of the night, had run wild upon the all-engrossing topic of the times. The Baron, who had been unusually silent and abstracted in the earlier portion of the evening, at length seemed to be aroused from his apathy, took a leading part in the discourse, and dwelt upon the benefits, and more especially upon the beauties, of the received code of etiquette in passages of arms with an ardor, an eloquence, an impressiveness, and an affectionateness of manner, which elicited the warmest enthusiasm from his hearers in general, and absolutely staggered even myself, who well knew him to be at heart a ridiculer of these very points for which he contended, and especially to hold the entire fanfaronade of dueling etiquette in the sovereign contempt which it deserves. Looking around me during a pause in the Baron's discourse, of which my readers may gather some faint idea when I say that it bore resemblance to the fervid, chanting, monotonous, yet musical sermonic manner of Coleridge, I perceived symptoms of even more than a general interest in the countenance of one of the party. This gentleman, whom I shall call Hermann, was an original in every respect, except, perhaps, in the single particular that he was a very great fool. He contrived to bear, however, among a particular set at the university, a reputation for deep metaphysical thinking, and, I believe, for some logical talent. As a duelist, he had acquired great renown. I forget the precise number of victims who had fallen at his hands, but they were many. He was a man of courage, undoubtedly, but it was upon his minute acquaintance with the etiquette of the duello and the nicety of his sense of honor that he most especially prided himself. These things were a hobby which he rode to the death. To Ritzner, ever upon the lookout for the grotesque, his peculiarities had for a long time past afforded food for mystification. Of this, however, I was not unaware. Although, in the present instance, I saw clearly that something of a whimsical nature was upon the tapis with my friend, and that Hermann was its especial object. As the former proceeded in his discourse, or rather monologue, I perceived the excitement of the latter momently increasing. At length he spoke, offering some objection to a point insisted upon by R, and giving his reasons in detail. To these the Baron replied at length, still maintaining his exaggerated tone of sentiment, and concluding, in what I thought very bad taste, with a sarcasm and a sneer. The hobby of Hermann now took the bit in his teeth. This I could discern by the studied hair-splitting farrago of his rejoinder. His last words I distinctly remember. Your opinions, allow me to say, Baron von Jung, although in the main correct, are, in many nice points, discreditable to yourself and to the university of which you are a member. In a few respects, they are even unworthy of serious refutation. I would say more to this, sir, were it not for the fear of giving you offense. Here the speaker smiled blandly. I would say, sir, that your opinions are not the opinions to be expected from a gentleman. As Hermann completed this equivocal sentence, all eyes were turned upon the Baron. He became pale, then excessively red. Then, dropping his pocket-handkerchief, stooped to recover it, when I caught a glimpse of his countenance, while it could be seen by no one else at the table. It was radiant with the quizzical expression which was its natural character, but which I had never seen it assume except when we were alone together. Excuse me, and when he unbent himself freely. In an instant afterward he stood erect, confronting Hermann, and so total an alteration of countenance in so short a period of time I certainly never saw before. For a moment I even fancied that I had misconceived him, and that he was in sober earnest. He appeared to be stifling with passion, and his face was cadaverously white. For a short time he remained silent, apparently striving to master his emotion. Having at length seemingly succeeded, he reached a decanter which stood near him, saying as he held it firmly clenched, "The language you have thought proper to employ, Mynheer Hermann, in addressing yourself to me, is objectionable in so many particulars that I have neither temper nor time for specification. That my opinions, however, are not the opinions to be expected from a gentleman, is an observation so directly offensive as to allow me but one line of conduct. Some courtesy, nevertheless, is due to the presence of this company, and to yourself, at this moment, as my guest. You will pardon me, therefore, if, upon this consideration, I deviate slightly from the general usage among gentlemen in similar cases of personal affront. You will forgive me for the moderate tax I shall make upon your imagination, and endeavor to consider, for an instant, the reflection of your person in yonder mirror as the living Mynheer Hermann himself. This being done, there will be no difficulty whatever. I shall discharge this decanter of wine at your image in yonder mirror, and thus fulfill all the spirit, if not the exact letter, of resentment for your insult, while the necessity of physical violence to your real person will be obviated." With these words, he hurled the decanter, full of wine, against the mirror which hung directly opposite Hermann, striking the reflection of his person with great precision, and of course shattering the glass into fragments. The whole company at once started to their feet, and, with the exception of myself and Ritzner, took their departure. As Hermann went out, the Baron whispered me that I should follow him and make an offer of my services. To this I agreed, not knowing precisely what to make of so ridiculous a piece of business. The duelist accepted my aid with his stiff and ultra-recherche air, and taking my arm led me to his apartment. I could hardly forbear laughing in his face while he proceeded to discuss, with the profoundest gravity, what he termed the refinedly peculiar character of the insult he had received. After a tiresome harangue in his ordinary style, he took down from his bookshelves a number of musty volumes on the subject of the duello, and entertained me for a long time with their contents, reading aloud and commenting earnestly as he read. I can just remember the title of some of the works. There were the Ordonnance of Philippe le Bel on Single Combat, the Théâtre of Honor by Favyn, and a treatise on the Permission of Duels by Indigné. He displayed also, with much pomposity, Brantôme's Memoirs of Duels, published at Cologne, 1666, in the types of Elsevier. A precious and unique vellum paper volume, with a fine margin, and bound by Derome. But he requested my attention particularly, and with an air of mysterious sagacity, to a thick octavo, written in barbarous Latin by one Hedelin, a Frenchman, and having the quaint title Duelli Lex Scripta et non Alterique. From this, he read me one of the drollest chapters in the world concerning Injure per applicationem, per constructionem, et per se, about half of which he averred, and was strictly applicable to his own refinedly peculiar case, although not one syllable of the whole matter could I understand for the life of me. Having finished the chapter, he closed the book, and demanded what I thought necessary to be done. I replied that I had entire confidence in his superior delicacy of feeling, and would abide by what he proposed. With this answer he seemed flattered, and sat down to write a note to the Baron. It ran thus: Sir, my friend, Mr. P., will hand you this note. I find it incumbent upon me to request, at your earliest convenience, an explanation of this evening's occurrences at your chambers. In the event of your declination of this request, Mr. P. will be happy to arrange, with any friend whom you may appoint, the steps preliminary to a meeting. With sentiments of perfect respect, your most humble servant, Johann Hermann. To the Baron Ritzner von Jung, August 18th, 18... Not knowing what better to do, I called upon Ritzner with this epistle. He bowed as I presented it, then, with a grave countenance, motioned me to a seat. Having perused the cartel, he wrote the following reply, which I carried to Hermann. Sir, through our common friend, Mr. P., I have received your note of this evening. Upon due reflection, I frankly admit the propriety of the explanation you suggest. This being admitted, I still find great difficulty, owing to the refinedly peculiar nature of our disagreement and of the personal affront offered on my part, in so wording what I have to say by way of apology, as to meet all the minute exigencies and all the variable shadows of the case. I have great reliance, however, on that extreme delicacy of discrimination, in matters appertaining to the rules of etiquette, for which you have been so long and so preeminently distinguished. With perfect certainty, therefore, of being comprehended, I beg leave, in lieu of offering any sentiments of my own, to refer you to the opinions of the Sieur Hedelin, as set forth in the 9th paragraph of the chapter of Injure per applicationem, per constructionem, et per se, in his Duelli Lex Scripta et non Alterique. The nicety of your discernment and all the matters here treated will be sufficient, I am sure, to convince you that the mere circumstance of me referring you to this admirable passage ought to satisfy your request, as a man of honor, for explanation. With sentiments of profound respect, Your most obedient servant, von Jung. The Herr Johann Hermann, August 18th, 18... Hermann commenced the perusal of this epistle with a scowl, which, however, was converted into a smile of the most ludicrous self-complacency, as he came to the rigmarole about injure per applicationem, per constructionem, et per se. Having finished reading, he begged me, with the blandest of all possible smiles, to be seated, while he made reference to the treatise in question. Turning to the passage specified, he read it with great care to himself, then closed the book, and desired me, in my character of confidential acquaintance, to express to the Baron von Jung his exalted sense of his chivalrous behavior, and in that of second, to assure him that the explanation offered was of the fullest, the most honorable, and the most unequivocally satisfactory nature. Somewhat amazed at all this, I made my retreat to the Baron. He seemed to receive Hermann's amicable letter as a matter of course, and after a few words of general conversation, went to an inner room and brought out the everlasting treatise, Duelli Lex Scripta et non Alterique. He handed me the volume and asked me to look over some portion of it. I did so, but to little purpose, not being able to gather the least particle of meaning. He then took the book himself and read me a chapter aloud. To my surprise, what he read proved to be a most horribly absurd account of a duel between two baboons. He now explained the mystery, showing that the volume, as it appeared prima facie, was written upon the plan of the nonsense verses of Du Bartas. That is to say, the language was ingeniously framed so as to present to the ear all the outward signs of intelligibility and even of profundity, while in fact not a shadow of meaning existed. The key to the whole was found in leaving out every second and third word alternately, when there appeared a series of ludicrous quizzes upon a single combat as practiced in modern times. The Baron afterwards informed me that he had purposely thrown the treatise in Hermann's way 2 or 3 weeks before the adventure, and that he was satisfied, from the general tenor of his conversation, that he had studied it with the deepest attention, and firmly believed it to be a work of unusual merit. Upon this hint he proceeded. Hermann would have died 1,000 deaths rather than acknowledge his inability to understand anything and everything in the universe that had ever been written about the duello. Haha. So that was a pretty good one. We are, let's see, at 3:27. Excellent. Thank you guys for still being here with me. Looks like it is probably just Jason and Cheryl right now, which is nice. So, the next one is going to be the one that Charles requested. It is The Man That Was Used Up. And the tagline, at least from, I'm assuming, the publisher, says, "A Tale of the Late Bugaboo and Kickapoo Campaign." Like usual, I have not read through this. I don't know if I have read this at all before. So this will be a new one to me. If I don't know how much foreign language is in it. So if I mispronounce things, I apologize. But you guys know it's just what we do. So with that, The Man That Was Used Up. Is he suggesting he has been used up? Not yet, Jason, huh? Just listen. Just listen to the story. It'll be fine. I cannot just now remember when or where I first made the acquaintance of that truly fine-looking fellow, Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith. Someone did introduce me to the gentleman, I am sure, at some public meeting I know very well, held about something of great importance, no doubt, at some place or another, I feel convinced. whose name I have unaccountably forgotten. The truth is... Sorry, some more people... Okay, I'll just let people read that on their own. The truth is that the introduction was attended, upon my part, with a degree of anxious embarrassment which operated to prevent any definite impressions of either time or place. I am constitutionally nervous. This, with me, is a family failing, and I can't help it. In especial, the slightest appearance of mystery, of any point I cannot exactly comprehend, puts me at once into a pitiable stage of agitation. There was something, as it were, remarkable. Yes, remarkable, although this is but a feeble term to express my full meaning, about the entire individuality of the personage in question. He was perhaps 6 feet in height, and of a presence singularly commanding. There was an air distingué pervading the whole man, which spoke of high breeding and hinted at high birth. Upon this topic, the topic of Smith's personal appearance, I have a kind of melancholy satisfaction in being minute. His head of hair would have done honor to a Brutus. Nothing could be more richly flowing or possess a brighter gloss. It was of a jetty black, which was also the color, or more properly the no color, of his unimaginable whiskers. You perceive I cannot speak of these latter without enthusiasm. It is not too much to say that they were the handsomest pair of whiskers under the sun. At all events, they encircled, and at times partially overshadowed, a mouth utterly unequaled. Here were the most entirely even and the most brilliantly white of all conceivable teeth. From between them, upon every proper occasion, issued a voice of surpassing clearness, melody, and strength. In the manner of the eyes, also, my acquaintance was preeminently endowed. Either one of such a pair was worthy a couple of the ordinary ocular organs. They were of a deep hazel, exceedingly large and lustrous, and there was perceptible about them, ever and anon, just that amount of interesting obliquity which gives pregnancy to expression. The bust of the general was unquestionably the finest bust I ever saw. For your life you could not have found a fault with its wonderful proportion. This rare peculiarity set off to a great advantage a pair of shoulders, which would have called up a blush of conscious inferiority into the countenance of the marble Apollo. I have a passion for fine shoulders, and may say that I never beheld them in perfection before. The arms altogether were admirably modeled, nor were the lower limbs less superb. These were, indeed, the ne plus ultra of good legs. Every connoisseur in such matters admitted the legs to be good. There was neither too much flesh nor too little, neither rudeness nor fragility. I could not imagine a more graceful curve than that of the os femoris, and there was just that due gentle prominence in the rear of the fibula which goes to the conformation of a properly proportioned calf. I wish to God my young and talented friend Hipon Hipino, the sculptor, had but seen the legs of Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith. But although men so absolutely fine-looking are neither as plenty as reasons or blackberries, still I could not bring myself to believe that the remarkable something to which I alluded just now, that the odd air of je ne sais quoi which hung about my new acquaintance, lay altogether, or indeed at all, in the supreme excellence of his bodily endowments. Perhaps it might be traced to the manner. Yet here again I could not pretend to be positive. There was a primness, not to say stiffness, in his carriage, a degree of measured and, if I may so express it, of rectangular precision attending his every movement, which, observed in a more diminutive figure, would have had the least little savor in the world of affection, pomposity, or constraint, but which, noticed in a gentleman of his undoubted dimensions, was readily placed to the account of reserve, hauteur, of a commendable sense, in short, of what is due to the dignity of colossal proportion. The kind friend who presented me to General Smith whispered in my ear some few words of comment upon the man. He was a remarkable man, a very remarkable man. Indeed, one of the most remarkable men of the age. He was an especial favorite, too, of the ladies, chiefly on account of his high reputation for courage. In that point, he is unrivaled. Indeed, he is a perfect desperado, a downright fire-eater, and no mistake, said my friend, here dropping his voice excessively low and thrilling me with that mystery of his tone. A downright fire-eater. And no mistake. Showed that, I should say, to some purpose in the late tremendous swamp fight, away down south, with the Bugaboo and the Kickapoo Indians. Here, my friend opened his eyes to some extent. Bless my soul, blood and thunder and all that. Prodigies of valor. Heard of him, of course. You know he's the man. Man alive, how do you do? Why, how are you? Very glad to see you indeed. Here interrupted the general himself, seizing my companion by the hand as he drew near, and bowing stiffly but profoundly as I was presented. I then thought, and I think so still, that I never heard a clearer nor a stronger voice, nor beheld a finer set of teeth. But I must say that I was sorry for the interruption just at that moment, as, owing to the whispers and insinuations aforesaid, my interest had been greatly excited in the hero of the Bugaboo and Kickapoo campaign. Mine too. However, the delightfully luminous conversation of Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith soon completely dissipated this chagrin. My friend leaving us immediately, we had quite a long tete-a-tete, and I was not only pleased, but really instructed. I never heard a more fluent talker or a man of greater general information. With becoming modesty, he forbore, nevertheless, to touch upon the theme I had just then most at heart. I mean the mysterious circumstances attending the Bugaboo War, and on my own part, what I conceived to be a proper sense of delicacy forbade me to broach the subject, although in truth I was exceedingly tempted to do so. I perceived, too, that the gallant soldier preferred topics of philosophical interest, and that he delighted especially in commenting upon the rapid march of mechanical invention. Indeed, lead him where I would, this was a point to which he invariably came back. There is nothing at all like it, he would say. We are a wonderful people and live in a wonderful age. Parachutes and railroads, man-traps and spring guns. Our steamboats are upon every sea, and the Nassau balloon packet is about to run regular trips, fare either way only 20 pounds sterling, between London and Timbuktu. And who shall calculate the immense influence upon social life, upon arts, upon commerce, upon literature, which will be the immediate result of the great principles of electromagnetics? Nor is this all, let me assure you. There is really no end to the march of invention. The most wonderful, the most ingenious, and let me add, Mr. Thompson, I believe is your name. Let me add, I say the most useful, the most truly useful mechanical contrivances are daily springing up like mushrooms, if I may so express myself, or more figuratively like grasshoppers, Mr. Thompson, about us and around us. Thompson, to be sure, is not my name. But it is needless to say that I left General Smith with a heightened interest in the man, with an exalted opinion of his conversational powers, and a deep sense of the valuable privileges we enjoy in living in this age of mechanical invention. My curiosity, however, had not been altogether satisfied, and I resolved to prosecute immediately inquiry among my acquaintances touching the Brevet Brigadier General himself, and particularly respecting the tremendous events quorum pars magna fuit during the Bugaboo and Kickapoo campaign. The first opportunity which presented itself, and which, horresco referens, I did not in the least scruple to seize, occurred at the church of the Reverend Dr. Drum Up, okay, where I found myself established one Sunday just at sermon time, not only in the pew, but at the side of that worthy and communicative little friend of mine, Miss Tabitha T. Thus seated, I congratulated myself, and with much reason, upon the very flattering state of affairs. If any person knew anything about Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith, that person, it was clear to me, was Miss Tabitha T. We telegraphed a few signals and then commenced, sotto voice, a brisk tete-a-tete. "Smith," said she, in reply to my very earnest inquiry. "Smith? Why not General A.B.C.? Bless me, I thought you knew all about him. This is a wonderfully inventive age. Horrid affair that, a bloody set of wretches, those Kickapoos. Fought like a hero, prodigies of valor, immortal renown. Smith, Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Why, you know he's the man." "Man," here broke in Dr. Drummump at the top of his voice, and with a thump that came near knocking the pulpit about our ears. "Man that is born of a woman hath but a short time to live. He cometh up and is cut down like a flower." I started to the extremity of the pew, and perceived by the animated looks of the divine, that the wrath which had nearly proved fatal to the pulpit, had been excited by the whispers of the lady and myself. There was no help for it, so I submitted with a good grace, and listened, in all the martyrdom of dignified silence, to the balance of that very capital discourse. Next evening found me a somewhat late visitor at the Rantipole Theatre, where I felt sure of satisfying my curiosity at once, by merely stepping into the box of those exquisite specimens of affability and omniscience, the Misses Arabella and Miranda Cognoscente. That fine tragedian, Climax, was doing Iago to a very crowded house, and I experienced some little difficulty in making my wishes understood, especially as our box was next the slips, and completely overlooked the stage. "Smith," said Miss Arabella, as she at length comprehended the purpose of my query. "Smith? Why not General John A.B.C.? "Smith?" inquired Miranda musingly. "God bless me, did you ever behold a finer figure?" "Never, madam, but do tell me, or so inimitable grace." "Never, upon my soul, but pray inform me, or so just an appreciation of stage effect, madam, or a more delicate sense of the true beauties of Shakespeare. Be so good as to look at that leg." "The devil!" and I turned to her sister. "Smith," said she, "why not General John A.B.C.? Horrid affair that, wasn't it? Great riches those bugaboos, savage, and so on. But we live in a wonderfully inventive age. Smith, oh yes, great man, perfect desperado, immortal renown, prodigies of valor. Never heard." This was given in a scream. "Bless my soul, why he's the man—" "Mandragora, nor all the drowsy syrups of the world shall ever medicine thee to that sweet sleep which thou out'st yesterday." Here roared out Climax just in my ear, and shaking his fist in my face all the time, in a way that I couldn't stand, and I wouldn't. I left the Mrs. Cognoscente immediately, went behind the scenes forthwith, and gave the beggarly scoundrel such a thrashing as I trust he will remember till the day of his death. At the soiree of the lovely widow, Mrs. Kathleen O'Trump, I was confident that I should meet with no similar disappointment. Accordingly, I was no sooner seated at the card table, with my pretty hostess for a vis-a-vis, than I propounded these questions, the solution of which had become a matter so essential to my peace. "Smith," said my partner, "why not General John A.B.C.? Horrible affair that was, wasn't it? Diamonds, did you say? Terrible wretches, those Kickapoos. We are playing whist, if you please, Mr. Tattle. However, this is the age of invention, most certainly the age, one must say. The age par excellence. Speak French? Oh, quite a hero, desperate, perfect desperado. No hearts, Mr. Tattle? I don't believe it. Immortal renown and all that. Prodigies of valor, never heard. Why, bless me, he's the man. Man! Captain Man! Here screamed some little feminine interloper from the farthest corner of the room. Are you talking about Captain Man and the duel? Oh, I must hear. Do tell. Go on, Mrs. O'Trump. Do now go on. And go on Mrs. O'Trump did. All about a certain Captain Man, who was either shot or hung, or should have been both shot and hung. Yes, Mrs. O'Trump went on, and I went off. There was no chance of hearing anything further that evening in regard to the Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith. Still, I consoled myself with the reflection that the tide of ill luck would not run against me forever, and so determined to make a bold push for information at the rout of that bewitching little angel, the graceful Mrs. Pirouette. Smith, said Mrs. P., as we twirled about together at a pas de zephyr. Smith. Why, not General John A.B.C. Dreadful business that of the bugaboos, wasn't it? Dreadful creatures, those Indians. Do turn out your toes. I really am ashamed of you, man of great courage, poor fellow. But this is a wonderful age for invention. Oh, dear me, I'm out of breath. Quite a desperado. Prodigies of valor, never heard? Can't believe it. I shall have to sit down and enlighten you. Smith, why, he's the man. Man, Fred, I tell you. Here bawled out Miss Bob Lou, as I led Mrs. Pirouette to a seat. Did ever anybody hear the like? It's Man Fred, I say, and not at all by any means Man Friday. Here Miss Bob Lou beckoned to me in a very peremptory manner, and I was obliged, will I nil I, to leave Mrs. P. for the purpose of deciding a dispute touching the title of a certain poetical drama of Lord Byron's, although I pronounced with great promptness that the true title was Man Friday, and not by any means Man Fred. Yet when I returned to seek Mrs. Pirouette, she was not to be discovered, and I made my retreat from the house in a very bitter spirit of animosity against the whole race of the Bob Loos. Matters had now assumed a really serious aspect, and I resolved to call at once upon my particular friend, Mr. Theodore Sinivatte, for I knew that here at last I should get something like definite information. Smith, said he, in his well-known peculiar way of drawling out his syllables. Smith. Why, not General John A.B.C. Savage affair that with the Kickapoos, wasn't it? Say, don't you think so? Perfect desperado. Great pity, upon my honor. Wonderfully inventive age. Prodigies of valor. By the by, did you ever hear about Captain Man? Captain Man be damned, said I. Please to go on with your story. Well, quite la même chose, as we say in France. Smith, eh? Brigadier General John A.B.C. I say, here Mr. S. thought it proper to put his finger to the side of his nose. I say, you don't mean to insinuate now, really and truly and conscientiously, that you don't know all about that affair of Smith's, as well as I do, eh? Smith, John A.B.C. Why, bless me, he's the man. Mr. Sinivatte, said I imploringly, is he the man in the mask? No, said he, looking wise, nor the man in the moon. This reply I considered a pointed and a positive insult, and so left the house at once in a high dudgeon, pardon me, with a firm resolve to call my friend, Mr. Sinavate, to a speedy account for his ungentlemanly conduct and ill-breeding. In the meantime, however, I had no notion of being thwarted touching the information I desired. There was one resource left me yet. I would go to the fountainhead. I would call forthwith upon the general himself and demand in explicit terms a solution of this abominable piece of mystery. Here, at least, there should be no chance for equivocation. I would be plain, positive, peremptory, as short as pie crust, as concise as Tacitus or Montesquieu. It was early when I called, and the general was dressing, but I pleaded urgent business, and was shown at once into his bedroom by an old valet, who remained in attendance during my visit. As I entered the chamber, I looked about, of course, for the occupant, but did not immediately perceive him. There was a large and exceedingly odd-looking bundle of something, which lay close by my feet on the floor, and, as I was not in the best humor in the world, I gave it a kick out of the way. "Ahem, ahem, rather civil that, I should say," said the bundle, in one of the smallest and altogether the funniest little voices, between a squeak and a whistle, that I'd ever heard in all the days of my existence. "Ahem, rather civil that, I should observe." I fairly shouted with terror, and made off at a tangent into the farthest extremity of the room. "God bless me, my dear fellow!" Here again whistled the bundle. What Why, what is the matter? I really believe you don't know me at all." What could I say to all this? What could I? I staggered into an armchair, and with staring eyes and open mouth awaited the solution of the wonder. "Strange you shouldn't know me, though, isn't it?" presently resqueaked the nondescript, which I now perceived was performing upon the floor some inexplicable evolution, very analogous to the drawing on of a stocking. There was only a single leg, however, apparent. "Strange you shouldn't know me, though, isn't it? Pompey, bring me that leg." Here Pompey handed the bundle a very capital cork leg, already dressed, which had screwed on in a trice, and then it stood up before my eyes. "And a bloody action it was," continued the thing, as if in soliloquy. "But then, one mustn't fight with the bugaboos, the kickpoos. Think of coming off with a mere scratch. Pompey, I'll thank you now for that arm. Thomas," turning to me, "is decidedly the best hand at a cork leg. But if you should ever want an arm, my dear fellow, you really must let me recommend you to Bishop." Here Pompey screwed on an arm. "We had rather hot work of it, that you may say. Now, you dog, slip on my shoulders and bosom. Petite makes the best shoulders, but for a bosom you will have to go to Ducrot." "Bosom?" said I. "Pompey, will you never be ready with that wig? Scalping is a rough process, after all, but then you can procure such a capital scratch at Delorme's." "Scratch? Now, valet, my teeth. For a good set of those, you had better go to Parmley's at once. High prices, but excellent work." Oh, wait, sorry, they have the quotation marks in the wrong place. "For a good set of those, you had better go to Parmley's at once. High prices, but excellent work." I swallowed some very capital articles, though, when the big bugaboo rammed me down with the butt end of his rifle. Butt end rammed down my eye. "Oh, yes, by the way, my eye. Here, Pompey, you scamp, screw it in. Those kickapoos are not so very slow at a gouge, but he's a belied man, that Dr. Williams, after all. You can't imagine how well I see with the eyes of his make." I now began very clearly to perceive that the object before me was nothing more nor less than that of my new acquaintance, Brevet Brigadier General John A. B. C. Smith. The manipulations of Pompey had made, I must confess, a very striking difference in the personal appearance of the man. The voice, however, still puzzled me no little, but even this apparent mystery was speedily cleared up. Pompey, you rascal, squeaked the general. I really do believe you would have let me go without my pallet. Hereupon the valet, grumbling out an apology, went up to his master, opened his mouth with the knowing air of a horse jockey, and adjusted therein a somewhat singular-looking machine in a very dexterous manner that I could not altogether comprehend. The alteration, however, in the entire expression of the general's countenance was instantaneous and surprising. When he spoke again, his voice had resumed all that rich melody and strength which I had noticed upon our original introduction. "Damn the vagabonds!" said he, in so clear a tone that I positively started at the change. "Damn the vagabonds! They not only knocked in the roof of my mouth, but took the trouble to cut off at least 7/8 of my tongue. There isn't Bonfante's equal, however, in America, for really good articles of this description. I can recommend you to him with confidence," here the general bowed, "and assure you that I have the greatest pleasure in so doing." I acknowledged his kindness in my best manner, and took leave of him at once, with a perfect understanding of the true state of affairs, with a full comprehension of the mystery which had troubled me so long. It was evident. It was a clear case. Brevet Brigadier General John A. B. C. Smith was the man. Was the man that was used up. So, guys, we have hit our hour. That was great. Thank you, Charles, for suggesting that one. As I say, I hadn't read it before, so that was new to me, which is fun for these days, you guys. Keep sending me your requests. We will be back together again on a Wednesday for the final few chapters of Louisa May Alcott's The Mysterious Key and What It Opened. I am now going to get the rest of my stuff together and build up my little fire for the solstice and, yeah, put out some good intentions for the second half of the year. So, you guys, I love you. Like the great Oz Jason, yes, very much so. Or, sometimes I wonder how much work goes into getting somebody ready in the morning. I take 2 hours. And this is what you get, and I don't have to be in front of a million people on TV every day. So, you guys, I love you. I will see you soon. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.